Welcome to the IoT Solutions World Congress 2022 Extend and our session panel entitled Solar, Wireless, and the Cloud for Smart Lighting. We're delighted that you're joining us to watch, and although this session was pre-recorded, you can contact myself and our panelists via the event site and via LinkedIn. And so with that, let's do a short introduction of myself and the speakers, and we'll get right into our topic. So I'm Alan Proethus. I'm the CEO of Capstone Partners. We're a strategic advisory for companies trying to accelerate their growth in the connected solution space. And we also deliver select connected solutions in both the Internet of Things and the 5G edge space. And personally, I'm also the former president of North America of Sigfox. So I've been in the IoT space for quite some time. And with that, Jeff, please tell us about yourself and your company.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Liebel. I'm the founder and CEO of Atmosphere IoT Corporation. We're a IoT platform as a service. We work largely with small to medium-sized OEMs and solution integrators to deploy complete sensor to cloud solutions for a variety of different use cases and vertical industries and so forth. My background is a diverse one. I've worked as a leader in a variety of different VC-funded startups to public companies involved in B2B SaaS, predictive analytics, and more or less the full IoT technology stack from semiconductors all the way across wireless networks and middleware and cloud platforms. So that's me. Thanks, Alan.
Great, thanks, Jeff. And Martin?
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Alan. My name is Martin Sony Plumas. I'm the director of North American sales at Suna Design, and I manage our North American subsidiary, which is called Sol. Sol is the leading solar lighting brand in North America. The company's been operating in the US for 30 years. And in 2020, Sol was acquired by Suna Design, which is a French company, as you can maybe hear from my accent, and a pure player of solar lighting and a leading manufacturer of smart all-in-one solar lights. Basically, our core business is to manufacture solar lighting systems for parking lots, streets, parks, as well as solar energy solutions that leverage our expertise of off-grid energy management to power smart city devices like Wi-Fi hotspots, CCTV cameras, and a variety of sensors that cities use to monitor their environment. Today, we're deploying these solutions in over 60 countries, and we've probably more than 115,000 systems operating worldwide. As far as I'm concerned, I've been with the company for 7 years in various business development roles around the world, and I've been really focused on North America since 2018.
Wow, well, thanks, Martin. Well, I can't think of a better business to be in today's world than in the solar energy business, especially given what's happened with oil prices over the last 2 months and just the emphasis in our world on environmental concerns. I mean, there's so many positive trends around what your company is doing. I mean, but also things have changed so much in the last few years because solar technology continues to evolve. Maybe you can start out just by helping educate the listener in terms of what's really been happening in the solar business. How is it different from perhaps a few years ago?
It's a very good question. Yeah, you're right. The business the market is really growing. It grows about 20% yearly globally. And we really see two trends happening in the solar lighting market. First, in emerging countries, which is where historically Suna has been the most active, the use of solar lighting has been really driven by fast-growing urbanization that's taking place in many African countries. The power infrastructure over there is not robust enough to keep up with this space. And therefore, you have many areas with little to no electricity. And that created a strong need for the deployment of public lighting infrastructure, and it's being done mainly using autonomous solar lights. And in fact, throughout the world, there are still several hundred millions of people that live without any access to energy. And therefore, we're actually seeing more and more nationwide developments of solar lighting systems. To give you an example, Suna Design has just signed a contract with the government of Togo to install and operate 50,000 solar lights throughout the country. And these government contracts are happening in many of these African nations.
Wow.
And secondly, uh, the second trend really now is focusing in mature countries that are already fully electrified. And over here in the US, there is an increasing demand for renewable and clean energy solutions, as you were telling earlier about the increase in gas prices. That's one of the reasons that drive this renewable and clean energy solution demand. But public and private customers have a growing interest for solutions that allow them to reduce their carbon footprint and reduce the energy bill also. And when it comes to public lighting, they're also looking to add more resiliency to their infrastructure. And basically, this is where we come in.
Well, that's fascinating how broadly solar is being considered for these applications, both in emerging markets and developed markets. And one of the things I've seen that perhaps is influencing some of this, I know here in the US, but in other countries as well, is that from a regulatory point of view, companies, especially publicly traded companies, are being asked to provide more and more data about what they're doing in terms of measuring the positive environmental impacts they're having. And that really brings us to the IoT side of this, because as I like to quote one of my sort of business heroes, Peter Drucker, really the father of modern management, had a very famous quote that you can't manage what you can't measure. And connectivity, being able to measure the impact and control these things is to me probably a really key component of what you're doing. So maybe help educate us about how does the IoT part of the solution sort of play a role in what you're doing?
You're absolutely right. Monitoring is everything. When you look at large scale projects that I was describing earlier, remote monitoring is a must. You need to know when a light is down and react quickly because there's a safety concern. And many of the contracts also that we have with the governments around the world also include a performance clause. So remote monitoring allows you to monitor that performance, right? And when you look at emerging countries, many of the systems that we deploy are deployed in remote areas, which means that it's not always easily accessible. And you don't want to have to schedule maintenance visits just to check that the light is on. So remote monitoring gives you the opportunity to only send your team when you know that something needs to be done. And then that saves on maintenance costs as well. That's easily measurable. When you look now at mature markets, many of the conventional LED streetlights that are being deployed are already being monitored remotely. And customers, they want to have the same control over their off-grid lighting infrastructure as they do with the grid-tied one. So this is why it's a must-have to be able to provide remote monitoring. But besides maintenance, remote monitoring also gives them information on energy and carbon savings, which are important for them to achieve their sustainability goals.
It's interesting stuff. I have a friend of mine who's involved even in the carbon credit markets. And he was recently talking to me about if you can sort of monitor and measure the energy impact or the energy savings of what you're doing, you could actually monetize those credits at some level. Are you seeing any of that in the smart lighting space yet?
Not quite there yet, but definitely that's a trend that's coming up, and more about we'll probably be shifting from a business model where we sell product to a business model where we sell data. But this is something in the future.
Everyone's dream, but there's been a few companies that have made incredible success just thinking about that from the data side. It's funny how you talk about monitoring sort of the lighting status in undeveloped versus developed countries. I can tell you I've worked on applications even here in the United States where on billboard lighting, for instance, where they had no way to tell if those lights were on, and advertisers get very upset if they're off. And so they previously, if of course the right solution is to hook it up with an IoT solution that actually has a sensor that records if the light goes off during certain hours. But they actually have to employ guys driving around at night, and they call them night riders that actually drive around just looking at billboards all night long. You just imagine them smoking cigarettes, wearing a cowboy hat or something. But anyway, Jeff. So Jeff, tell us about your piece of the puzzle, because this is really fascinating how far smart lighting has come, but it requires a lot of intelligence and infrastructure to actually enable all of this. So help me understand, what you're doing and how it fits in here.
Yeah, sure. So, it's interesting. I've been watching, kind of observing this journey of smart cities, and obviously there's a lot of, as you put it, Peter Drucker's, you need to measure things before you can manage them. Clearly cities have been putting in place, wired infrastructures to manage lighting systems and traffic management systems, and that have been around for decades. But as cities get smarter and more of these devices need to be quote unquote off the grid, you start to see the prevalence more and more of wireless technologies coming into play to connect these things and getting insights and getting data and getting status from these off the grid devices, whether they're solar powered or some other battery technology, what have you. So where we fit in on Atmosphere's side is we're a low code platform that can ingest a lot of custom data from a lot of these devices over a variety of wireless technology. So we're pretty wireless agnostic in that sense. And I think we've integrated everything from BLE and Wi-Fi to Zigbee and Sigfox and LoRa and cellular. And so from our standpoint, what we've seen is across the different use cases is there really is no one wireless technology that sort of fits. But what you need to be able to do is you need to be able to ingest a lot of different data payloads and decode data payloads that are coming over different wireless technologies. And then and our role in all of this is to help ingest that data, register those devices, and allow clients, whether they're OEMs like a Sol or a system integrator who's purchasing off-the-shelf devices and putting together their own sort of wireless networks for their clients, to be able to get access, register those devices, and monitor those assets as a fleet, so that they can gain insights and make smarter business decisions, whether those are understanding, as Martin put it, which ones of these are not working correctly because they're out of state or out of norm, or other use cases.
Okay, so you're enabling, so your wireless connectivity, or for that matter, wireline, you really care how the data gets to you, I'm assuming. It's all data, right? The trick is to get it.
Okay.
And then you're acting upon that data to actually put it in a form that you can create insights out of. And then do you go so far as terms of the application side, the dashboarding side? How do you think about those things?
Yeah, so typically our clients want to present what we're doing to their end customers as their own branded monitoring service. So we typically are the sort of they white label our platform, and we're sort of the wizard behind the curtain, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And so typically what we're presenting on behalf, our clients are presenting using our technology to their end customers is fleets of devices, and what's device status are they in, whether it's critical, warning, missing, normal, and then also specific custom dashboards and visualizations and notifications and alerts that are required, that can give users a split-second view as to what's going on where, and what are the hot priority devices that they need to pay attention to right now. And what we're seeing is that because there's such a variety of, there's so much fragmentation around that, you need sort of this ability, this nimbleness to be able to customize applications in the cloud for different use cases, for different purposes. And we even see clients who have deployed multiple different applications depending on the use case that they're trying to serve and the customer need that they're trying to address, whether that's different cloud applications, different wireless technologies, different sensing technologies, even in the small and medium-sized market. I think we're at that point in evolving IoT where you can create very quickly and cost effectively, lots of different custom kind of sensor to cloud solutions without having to do heavy forklifts or invest in long and expensive product development life cycles.
Yeah, it's one of the trends I've been seeing the last couple of years. To your point, Jeff, about the flexibility of being able to adopt is, the commercial customer now expects the user experience to be equal to any consumer experience they have at a mobile device. So, they come off using Instagram or Ring for their doorbell or whatever it is, and then they go to their commercial application. It can't look like a dog. It can't look like a ransom note that was put together anymore. It has to look almost as good as pretty much what they are used to using in their personal lives every day. And I think that's that's one of the bigger challenges I see on sort of the enablement technology side, is because traditionally we don't think about it like that on the more enterprise side of technology, right? But in terms of user experience, I mean, do you see those things converging as well?
I do personally. I see that, especially when you're talking about smart cities, and oftentimes or in industrial environments where you're seeing a lot of legacy applications that have been around for a long time. Maybe they're running off of a mainframe or an old mini computer, and like you said, they don't resemble modern, sort of consumer UX best practices. But in fact, to extract the value out of this new insight from these remote devices often requires behavioral change from people out in the field who are not necessarily sitting in a NOC or some sort of centralized data center. And these are technicians out in the field who typically will have a mobile phone or some other device, and they've got to be able to get access to that data in a way that's meaningful and easily understandable by them, so that they can make the right decisions. Because ultimately, you can put all this plumbing and all this infrastructure in place, but if you can't ultimately get to the ground truth, the ground level, and get those customers to act in a smarter way with all this data, you're really going to struggle to achieve the ROI from all of this.
Yeah, that's for sure. And Martin, when we talk about customers, because at the end of the day, it's all about your end customer finding value in the integrated solution that you're providing. So maybe you can share your thoughts on your customer journey, because originally, of course, none of the products you provide were connected. It's really, that was a feature set that you evolved over time to remain competitive and to have a unique differentiator into your market. So how did you sort of approach the problem of, how do we get data from these things we're selling forever? You said you've been around for 30 years. I mean, it sort of reminds me of like when we're watching a movie with our adult children and they see like some green screen or some older computer technology, you actually have to explain what that was to them. And so it's a lot of things have changed in those 30 years since you've been selling these products. So how did you sort of think about this, approach it, and go about attacking that problem?
Yeah, you're right. It's crazy to imagine how quickly that technology evolves, especially in renewable energy and IoT. Suna itself, Sol has been around for 30 years. That's true. But I was originally part of Suna, and that was a company created in 2009. The purpose of the company was to provide access to energy to the 700,000 million plus people around the world that don't have access to electricity. And at the time, as you were saying, there was it wasn't necessarily a smart technology available yet. So at the time, the whole idea was to create a product that could be installed in the harshest environment without technical skills, without requiring maintenance. And so this is how we came up with the first all-in-one solar streetlights that was built with components that could resist to these difficult environments. And we started selling and installing thousands of those in rural areas around the world, and they were not monitored. But very quickly, we realized that there was also a strong need, a strong demand for our products in urban areas. But there, we knew that providing a great outdoor lighting solution wasn't enough, especially in mature markets that are fully electrified already. Because you're already competing with conventional LEDs that deliver the same quality of lighting. So you have to, in order to be relevant in these markets, we needed to be able to bring more to the table. And that's why we started looking at smart city solutions and connectivity. So Suna Design's expertise is really in the power pack, in the way that we are able to manage and deliver the energy. So the easy application is lighting. But our solutions, they can be equipped with add-ons that we don't manufacture. And those add-ons are basically any type of IoT device. To give you an example, in Florida, we have hundreds of systems in one community developments that are equipped with environmental sensors to monitor air quality. And that is accessible to the residents on a community web portal. Some of the lights in this development are also equipped with communication devices that provide Wi-Fi hotspots for the residents of that community in the high traffic areas. And what I think really becomes powerful when you combine solar lighting and smart city features, when you deploy it on a citywide scale. And in a city, you have street lighting everywhere, right? It's like a spider's web. And if a city converts these lights to solar, sorry, if they convert these lights to solar, not only do they save on energy, but they also add resiliency to their infrastructure, which means that they now have the ability to have a public lighting network that works even when the grid is down, which unfortunately happens more often than one might think in the United States. So now, if you take that, you add IoT communication devices to those solar lights. And when there is a blackout because of like a weather event or a cyber attack, which seems to be something that everybody's talking about right now, not only do your public lights stay on in the streets, but now you're enabling the police and the firefighters to use your solar lights network to communicate and coordinate the safety operations. And this is typically the sort of smart and connected solutions that we're pushing to cities and governments for example, in the Caribbean islands that are particularly subject to hurricanes. This is the type of things that I think are a great mix between solar lights, which is just the basic thing that's been around for a long time, and adding those new technologies that enable you to do much more advanced things.
That's amazing. And of course, Puerto Rico is still trying to recover. 5 years later from that terrible hurricane that destroyed much of their infrastructure. But even in the U.S., to your point, Martin, I mean, it's funny because I don't remember a lot of brownouts or blackouts when I was growing up. But now, because the energy generation has lagged behind energy consumption in a lot of places, we see in California now almost annually rationing of energy. And so to be able to have this and monitor it. So when you start connecting up all these lights and all this infrastructure, what kind of benefits in terms of specific metrics? Do you get to see some of the metrics, like how much does it save you on maintenance or truck rolls or energy consumption? Do you have any sense of some of the savings and benefits, that are more specific about some of these solutions?
Yeah, that's really going to depend on the scale of the projects that you deploy and whether initially there was access to electricity in the area that you deploy this. But in terms of metrics, the platforms that we're using to monitor the savings on carbon or energy or so on, it's really flexible. So it allows you to basically pull up any sort of data that the customer wants. So if the customer is interested really in their carbon footprint savings, you're able to provide that information to them. If they want to know, how much you're relieving by using solar lighting from the grid consumption, you're also able to provide that type of information. When it comes to ROI calculation, that's really based on again, as I was saying, the scale of the project. If you just install one solar light here and there to the parking lot, obviously the ROI is going to the savings that you're going to make on electricity is going to take a very long time. But what you have to know is, on average, globally, about 40% of a city's electric bill is for public lighting. So if you convert, it's huge. It's huge. So if you convert your public lighting infrastructure to solar, in no time you're going to start seeing a return on your investment. But first on the energy savings, but also all the benefits of using solar, and resiliency is really a big one.
Yeah, especially in today's world, I think people are becoming much more sensitive to that, especially as our climate gets more extreme, it seems, with weather. But that's fascinating. So the message I'm going to take away is the more you invest in smart solutions in cities and IoT, the more money you're going to save. That'll be my industry takeaway from this. But Jeff, are you seeing similar things? I mean, you're enabling different commercial use cases. I mean, how do you see this from an ROI, from a customer perspective, when they try to make these decisions about how do they justify the investment? I mean, what are you seeing in terms of this process?
Yeah, I mean, I see that there's the curve is sort of bending every year more and more in favor of different use cases that were sort of maybe on the margin. Like the idea of making something smart and connected It wasn't new, but the economics weren't there to achieve the ROI associated with it. So as you look, and so what I've observed is as the price points and the costs of enabling these different use cases have come down, that the payback period, like Martin was talking about, a 40% electricity, the amount of the electricity expenses of a city that go towards lighting, and how you can save on that by migrating over to solar is in one part function of the cost of electricity, which can go up and down. But what we're seeing more consistently is that the cost of from a CapEx and an ongoing standpoint to migrate is gradually going in the right direction to enable positive ROI. So, and the different, and how you do that, what we're seeing is that, again, like earlier, I was looking, one size never fits all. And depending on the deployment scenarios and the topology or the network, topology of these different solutions, different architectures and different technologies enable better ROIs. And so, for example, if you've got a bunch of devices in a general vicinity, it might be more economical to create a wireless mesh network or a local network, and then backhaul between amongst those devices, and then backhaul that over a single, say, wide area network connection back into the cloud. That might achieve a higher payback, quicker payback period on multiple levels than having into every individual device connected in isolation with its own dedicated, connectivity technology and its dedicated, connection. So from that standpoint, you got to kind of have your eyes wide open as to what the difference. There's so much fragmentation still out there. I mean, Sigfox, went into bankruptcy, so they're not really a viable option anymore. But there's still, the adage: if you don't like this standard, there's always another one to go pick from. There's never enough. And so from that point, but what I'm seeing as a positive trend is the price of connectivity, the price of the chips, the price of the radios, all that, the cloud hosting infrastructures, all these things are heading in the right direction to enable a faster and faster payback period. You just got to be able to have the smarts to figure out what's the most optimal one for that use case and that scenario.
Yeah, Martin, did you have something to add there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm in full agreement with what Jeff is saying. And to give you an example, when we actually the fragmentation of the different communication technologies that exist is great from a manufacturer's perspective, because that allows us to really choose and tailor our solutions based on the customer need. For example, when we work in large scale government projects, we use LoRa as our communication protocol for all of these lights to communicate and send back the information to the cloud. But in the United States, where the average project is 6 or 7 lights, using a LoRaWAN based technology with a gateway, it really adds to the cost and just kills the economics. And so we have the ability to use a GPS based solution in the United States that's fully plug and play, where you don't need to do those to create those individual network. And that's the whole goal after this is to really be able to have a platform where you can merge all of these different communication protocols together, so that for the end users, and that's going back to what you were saying earlier, for the end users, it's seamless. He's able to visualize all of his infrastructure, whether they're connected through LoRa or GPS or whatever technology. And for him, it's the same approach. And I think with a platform like what Jeff is providing, that really enables us to offer these to our customers.
Yeah, I always like to say, the customer, we tend to get into these religious wars about connectivity, and at the end, the customer doesn't really care if you connect it with happy feelings and black magic. They just want to know that it meets a certain SLA, it meets a price point. It's a little bit of future proofing in it. And to your point, I think LoRa is a fantastic. Sigfox never had a tech problem; they had a business model issue, is what killed them. With LoRa, I think the business model is much stronger. They also were smart in that they got the standard adopted globally by the ITU in the last couple months. And so they are officially a standard now, which I think does help the credibility, and also that Amazon has adopted it as a big part of what they're doing with the sidewalk stuff. But in the end, and people, even 5 years ago at Sigfox, people don't realize that 50% of all deployments actually had a companion connectivity technology with it. And I think that's what we're seeing across all technologies, that it's very rare for one piece of connectivity to do it all. For instance, people, and I apologize to the audience for geeking out for 2 minutes on connectivity technology, but most people don't realize that even with Bluetooth 5 dot whatever, theoretically you have a kilometer unobstructed coverage outside. And so while in real life that may be a couple hundred meters, you have an incredible selection of less and less expensive technologies. And if we look at the cellular stuff with CAT-M and NB-IoT, the module cost has been dropping, although still is a bit more expensive, but the actual service cost is actually competitive with any non-cellular LPWAN technology. And so it's an abundance of connectivity riches to connect it. So connectivity isn't an excuse anymore. In fact, if anything, it's a reason to move ahead with some of these things, because we've never had a selection of connectivity options that were so inexpensive and so available in one form or another. So I would argue that the worst thing you could do was start your project with, hey, we like this connectivity, rather than, hey, what's the problem we're trying to solve? And then let the solution present itself based on the needs that you have.
Yeah, I'm in violent agreement with that, Alan. I feel like the grand challenge with a lot of these use cases is shifting now away from the plumbing and the infrastructure. A lot of the black magic of that is kind of getting, revealed. And now it's all about the data right now. And so, and how can you make increasingly sophisticated, capture increasingly sophisticated insights and act on that more. So now it's I think what we're seeing is people moving from, like a basic workflow actions to, basic decision triggering our devices out of state. How do I, and more towards more advanced analytics and doing modeling and machine learning data as they gather more and more, and they have the kind of training sets to be able to do more advanced predictive analytics. That's where I'm seeing more of the innovation and breakthroughs for competitive gain happening now, that the connectivity, the plumbing piece of this with LPWAN and wireless, and we've started to really do a good job collectively as an industry, kind of demystifying and simplifying that.
We're getting there, but try explaining to your family over dinner, right? So it's they're like, yeah, that's very nice. What are we doing on this weekend, right? But it's still a lot of plumbing. But yes, at least it's getting a bit easier, and at least there's many more options. But every technology goes through this cycle. If we think back, if we remember even the early days of PCs or smartphones, and how much technical expertise you had to have to do them, and as time goes on, it gets abstracted and focuses more on the user squeezing value out of it. I think we see the same trend happening with these connected solutions, especially for smart cities. Because even though, one of the things I look at with smart cities and smart lighting is that the connectivity enables the justification that then frees up the budget to do the things the municipalities really want to do. Because cities or communities don't wake up in the morning and say, man, I really want to know, like, to get a data flow from that light. They're really thinking of waking up in the morning saying, I really want to take care of my citizens in these ways that are priority to me. And so if this enables that, which I believe it does, which is why we're seeing so much success in doing it. But that's sort of the way of putting, the end user sort of customer hat on, the way I'm looking at it. I mean, so, Martin, we talked about like how far we've come, what you guys have done. I mean, how do we see this continuing to evolve in the next few years? I mean, 5 years to me seems like a couple of lifetimes in today's world. So I tend to think about things more like in 3 years, but if you can guess 5 years, we should invest more money in you guys. But I mean, how do you see this evolving in terms of what you're doing with these connected solutions?
No, you're right. It's very difficult to know what things are going to be like in 5 years. What I can tell you, there are a couple of several things that I can think of when it comes to the future. First, from a products perspective, there are massive investments that are being done globally to increase the efficiency of solar cells in solar panels and also in battery technologies. So I think in 3 to 5 years, Solar lights will have become so efficient and so affordable that it will be on its way to become the norm. As I was saying earlier, it's already a market that's growing 20% yearly globally. So it's only going to pick up faster. And I think directly resulting from the increased power capacity will be the ability to bring even more connected features. Today, there is still a bit of a gap between the smart city features that you can provide with solar and what you can offer with grid-tied lights, because the power draw for some of these applications is still too high. But I think in 5 years, solar will have completely caught up, and you'll be able to provide the exact same type of connectivity features with either solar or grid-tied systems. And I really leave it to the IoT-focused companies to tell us what devices they think a city will need in 5 years, and we'll be here to integrate them. But as for the lights themselves, I think they will become even smarter with new algorithms and new devices that will enable us to adjust the light level to the type of user that's using the roads. If you're a car or if you're pedestrian, you're not going to get the same amount of light. And basically, this will allow us to create more compact systems that consume less energy. And finally, going back to the first thing that we discussed about the future, I really see that there could be a change in business model. We're at Suna, we're already offering something that we call solar lighting as a service, which is a subscription-based model that allows a customer to deploy lighting infrastructure at no upfront cost. And we take care of the maintenance and operation, but basically it's just a financing program. But in the future, and thanks to the use of connected devices, what I think we may see is that we go from a business model where we manufacture and sell products to one that's mainly based on the sale of services and data monetization.
It's amazing for you to say that, because that's the trend, I think, of leading companies offering connected solutions regardless of the industry they're in. And I think it's just brilliant, because if you look at the pace of innovation, and no one can be a specialist in everything, and you need to be a specialist in lighting to really capture the innovation potential over the next couple of years. So I can see it making a lot of sense. And I've seen other things where you have SLAs baked in for some of these agreements where you pre-agree on certain efficiency improvements over time based on how the technology will develop. And it's really a win for everybody, because you have the predictability of a customer for 5 years or 10 years, and the customer has the predictability of cost over a period of time with improvements. So I think it's a great way to go. Of course, I always think about batteries when I think about all this stuff, which is always the challenging part of these solutions. But if we can solar power even LoRa gateways efficiently, that alone is a huge step forward, for what we're doing in this industry. And then Jeff, let me ask you the same question before we wrap up here of, what do you really see as the biggest changes happening over the next 3 to 5 years in terms of what you're doing? Because I feel like we've had a lot of changes, but we're really just starting to even realize the value we can capture from some of these technological developments.
Yeah, so I think I sort of alluded to it earlier where, I think more advanced machine learning with some of this data to glean more insights to make smarter decisions is where we see ourselves going forward increasingly. And ultimately, what's happening in the market, what's driving this is, what I hear over and over is a lot of in the OT world, in the operations technology world, whether it's smart cities or industrial environments, or what you're seeing is a labor shortage. And you're seeing technicians who've been out in the field they sort of have this, kind of black art knowledge of how to maintain and keep this equipment working and how to fix it and how to update it. A lot of those people are retiring. And so there's this economic driver of more and more automation, right? And to be able to, because you're not going to be able to replace all these people one for one. And so these devices, as a result, by necessity, are going to need to become more and more and more connected and intelligent to tell you exactly what to do before you deploy out that scarce, precious, expensive resource to go out and address whatever's happening. And so that to me is sort of the kind of week by week trend that I see happening in a space, and that we're kind of tackling in full force.
Well, I'm so glad you brought up the people side of this, because I couldn't agree with you more. And that It's a trend of the baby boomers are just starting to retire. It's a trend, there's a general labor shortage. And frankly, COVID has dramatically accelerated the sort of non-participation problem, shall we call it? Whether it's people who just don't want to go back to the workforce, people retiring early, people working less, people working differently. All these trends are positive for what we always talk about, the vision of connected solutions, IoT. I mean, the more efficient you can be with your maintenance of things, the more you can measure it remotely, the more you can not depend upon humans for the kind of tasks suitable for automation. I think it's a win-win-win, frankly, for everyone.
Yeah, and I would only add, echoing what Martin was saying about kind of managed, I love their solar lighting as a service offering. That concept, they've had that for a while, and it's very innovative. I see that whole model of migrating from the traditional sort of CapEx, here's the thing, buy it, now it's your problem, to more of this managed service provider approach, where you see it moving more from a CapEx to more of an OpEx sort of a business model, and where people they happen to be providing a thing at the end of the road, but what they're really offering is the full life cycle maintenance of that thing as a managed service. I see that more and more in multiple different industries, and it's really cool to see it in the public sector and in smart cities.
Yeah, and once again, we could thank Apple for training everybody to think about monthly operational cost instead of buying things up front, right, with your phone. But anyway, our time's almost up. But Martin, Jeff, thank you very much for such a great session about solar, wireless, and the cloud for smart lighting. I think this has incredible potential to continue to grow, and all the trends are behind us, and it's great to see how IoT really enables all this to happen. So thanks for joining us, everyone, and please feel free to reach out directly to any of us for any follow-up. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.